to living down in LA, I heard that you paid an editor to change the color of Tupac hat and tank top from blue to red. Is that true?
A single decision, seemingly minor, can change the way history remembers an icon. What if I told you that one of Tupac's most legendary looks was a trick of the camera, a controversial flick of digital paint with explosive consequences? In a world where color is life or death, Suge Knight risked everything to turn a blue LA hat red. And the real story behind that moment will upend everything you thought you knew about West Coast hip-hop.
Some of it is, but you gotta realize a lot of people get bits and pieces of it, and then people talk, and once something's done, you have like 30 people talk, 100 people talk, and then a lot of people who may not have been there have tail ends of the tale.
Rumors spread through Los Angeles faster than the sound of sirens. Suge Knight, the formidable founder of Death Row Records, sets the record straight once and for all, confirming he did alter Tupac's LA hat from blue to red in the "To Live and Die in LA" music video. But behind closed doors, this was never just about a hat. It was about unity and survival. As Suge reveals, stories morph and multiply with every retelling. But the truth, raw and rarely seen, holds decades of pain, pride, and political symbolism.
First of all, when we were in the studio to do the song, it was about bringing everybody in Los Angeles and the West Coast together. Because if you notice, it's like different hoods everywhere. You got red over here, you got blue over there. We got every different gang you could think of in Los Angeles County.
The West Coast in the 90s was a war zone of colors and codes, Bloods, Crips, Southsiders, 18th Street and more, fractured by geography and allegiance, united only in music. For Suge, the video had to be more than flashy visuals. It was a diplomatic summit. Every gang, every block, every kid who ever dreamed of more was represented. The director's lens didn't just capture artists. It stitched together bitter enemies under the banner of the West. Suge wanted the world to witness something revolutionary. LA's deep-rooted conflicts paused for 3 minutes of unity, a rare ceasefire immortalized on film.
What I mean by that, like I said, you got the Pyrus and the Bloods, you got the Crips, you got the Southsiders, you got Asian gangs, you got the Samoans, you got a little bit of everybody, right? So the whole thing was, it's going to be an anthem for the West Coast.
And so the vision was grand. This song, the anthem for the West Coast, was to be more than a hit. It was about creating something legendary, something almost mythic. A flash of red or blue in the wrong place, especially on a superstar like Tupac, could be a declaration of war. But Suge's aim was different. He wanted to conjure a moment that transcended gang beefs, a visual that could make every hood, every set, see themselves as part of a legacy bigger than their own block.
And when it came to Pac wanted to get a LA hat. And so when Pac got the LA hat, he was like, man, what you think? He was like, I couldn't find one, a red LA hat, a burgundy LA hat. He said they only had the blue one. They didn't have no black one. They only had this blue one, right? I said, at the end of the day, it don't matter what color it is. I said, because everybody know where your heart is, and it's representing the whole West Coast. But I said, better yet, it'd be very, very special to change it up.
It wasn't an oversight. There simply were no red LA hats on the racks. An irony not lost on anyone who lived in LA's color-coded streets. Suge faced a choice: settle for the blue, defying his creative vision, or defy logic itself by digitally changing the color, a move so bold it bordered on sacrilege. But for Suge, it was about meaning. Everybody know what your heart in, and it's represented in the whole West Coast. So they made history. The blue LA hat filmed on set became red in post-production, a subtle tweak, a symbolic power play.
I just do it through the video and edit it, and that's what happened. But if you look at that video, it's like everything was right on point. Even the fact that, it's not about bringing up old wounds, but at the same time, Pac hated Trey. So that's why at the end of the video, Pac said what he said. California Part 2 without, what he said about the nigga. But that's all it was. We always want to, at least I always want to be creative and do something different, because anything that came out on Death Row, it wasn't going to be normal. anything Death Row stood for, it was pretty much the people's champ, Death Coast. What Death Row was like the West Coast label, but in every state we catered to the inner cities, we catered to the ghetto, we catered to the people. So it was very important that we did that. Every time we got up the bat, we're gonna hit a home run.
For Suge, Death Row was never just another record label. It was an institution that defied the status quo. Creativity had to break new ground, even if it meant shelling out massive capital. Suge admits he was the first to blow $1 million on a music video. Cash he never expected to see again. The goal was never recoupment, it was legacy. Every Death Row project was intended to disrupt, to challenge, to make people talk. The video's authenticity, the vibrant energy, the wild laughter, the real locations became a love letter to LA and a bold statement for unity.
I mean, sometimes I was the first person to do $1 million video and never recoup the money back from my art, even though you're supposed to, but I didn't. Because if it ain't family, you'll be able to tell.
Why do it? Because family can feel the difference. A fake can't dance like the real ones. The laughter, the bars, the risk, all were real. The hat became more than an accessory. It was a wartime flag, a silent message of unity sewn into hip-hop's history, hinting that even old wounds could be approached with creativity and courage rather than tired violence.
Now, if you make it fake, you can still have an artist in a video or do a song together, but it's not going to come across organic. It's not going to come off like they really care about each other. At one particular time, everybody on Death Row really loved each other. I mean, you got to remember one thing. Death Row was an artist label. You come to the studio, and time you get to the studio doors, I don't care if it's raining, I don't care if it's hot, I don't care if it's cold, and the security's gonna pat everybody down on the way in, and they're gonna pat everybody down on the way out, because the magic we make in that studio, we never want to have a situation where somebody take a cassette and sneak it out, and then your shit's being sold at the swap meet before it come out. But it was so much of a real artist label, a real family, that everything was separate.
Inside Death Row's formidable fortress, trust was currency. Editors, artists, even security. Everyone played a role, but few crossed into the inner circle. Suge paints a vivid picture. Relentless security at the gates, phone calls tapped, everyone frisked on the way in and the way out. This wasn't paranoia, it was protection. From informants, from police, from the betrayal that always loomed just outside the studio's thick doors. Tupac, notoriously wary, demanded no undercover cops, no silent recorders, no outsiders when he crafted his masterpieces. In that crucible of distrust, a brotherhood was forged. Volatile, yes, but real enough that you could feel it through the speakers. According to hip-hop historians and numerous insiders, Death Row quickly became infamous in LA for its security, a reflection of the high stakes at play as law enforcement constantly scrutinized the label. Every rumor, every leak could trigger violence. The hat, the looks, the crew, every detail was a calculated act of survival, disguised as art.
Even with the people who work for Death Row, even if they didn't work for Death Row directly and they did security, majority everyone signed the NDAs where they couldn't do books and talk about it. I just never really enforced a lot of this stuff, because if somebody want to be a weirdo and make up lies, you don't gotta put them down. That's pretty soon the truth gonna come out. So the only people know this really went on to Death Row is the people who really know what went on with Death Row.
For Suge, loose talk was an occupational hazard, but the truth always clawed its way to the surface. He speaks almost wearily about NDAs and non-disclosures, knowing that secrets can't stay buried forever. Only those inside the storm really understood the tornado of loyalty and betrayal Death Row managed daily. The myth-making around Death Row, who was in, who was out, became just as legendary as the music itself. Nowhere did those loyalties and betrayals sting harder than around the funeral of Bunchy. When some prominent voices failed to appear at his service, a dark shadow passed through the community. The absence spoke volumes, fueling rifts that fractured friendships and sent rumors spiraling. Suge details the domino effect this had, remembering a time when all it took was a suggestion, a whisper from someone in authority, to pit the city's hardest against one another.
You got people that knew Buntry. Their grandmother lived a few houses down from Buntry. Their father would go and talk to Buntry's mother and their family every day. And the whole east side come to the funeral, but you don't. So that's when all the whispers started. That's when everything started changing. That's when everybody got to start picking sides, because why would you not go to the funeral? So when people break stuff down and they want to prove their point, if you ask them why you didn't go to the funeral, they can't say they did. But they didn't. Once you choose to wear a wire and send everybody to prison, I'm not going to pull it. Just stay out the way, because when you do that, you're not welcome anymore.
Loyalty was the backbone of the East Side. To betray it, to be an informant, to show up only when it benefited you meant exile. Suge's contempt is explicit. Once you choose to wear a wire and send it right to prison, you're not welcome anymore. The pain is raw, still bleeding despite the years. Yet beneath the harsh words is a longing for reconciliation, for the harmony that once bound the death row family together.
I'm going to put it to you like this. If you notice, James never been around us. James never worked for me. He wasn't part of our crew. James never had a death row chain. James never had a MOB ring or none of that.
Outsiders and hangers-on like James played ambiguous roles, never fully accepted, always on the periphery, hustling a few dollars outside Club 662, but never part of the core. Suge demystifies the myth. James had no death row chain, no MOB credentials. He was at the fringes, never inside, despite the stories that swirl online and in the streets.
It'd be like over 100 people, sometimes 200 people at a time in line to get in Club 662. So James would go to people at the end of the line and say, look, give me $20, give me $10, and I'll take you to the front. And James would walk 2 people, 4 people. I don't give a fuck if it was 8 people. They give him $20 or $100. James gonna walk them right to the front. They still gotta pray to get in my club, but James gonna be able to walk them to the front. And then when security go and be like, hey, Mr. Knight, this guy over here keep walking people to the front, cutting the line. I think they're giving him money. I said, I know it. It's okay. Because if I didn't have nothing against James, if he make $50 or $100 or whatever he makes, there ain't nothing out of my pocket. They ain't taking from my club. So he did that. But James never participated with us. He went out of town with us. He went to the studio with us. He went none of those type of things.
The club line at 662 was legendary. Hundreds waiting in the neon glare for a shot at glory. On the street hustler stage, James worked the crowd, making quick cash by promising access that, thanks to Suge's amusement, he often delivered. But he never crossed the velvet rope into true death row business, an allegory for the many outsiders hoping proximity alone would gain them entry to hip-hop royalty. As the all-nighters, the studio sessions, and the relentless grind wore on, Suge's philosophy hardened. Take care of your own, be accountable for both blessings and curses. He describes how every act of generosity, every act of defiance spawned its own dangers, jealousy growing in the cracks where gratitude should have bloomed. Sometimes, he says, the good deeds, like paying legal fees to keep friends out of prison, stirred more jealousy than the chains and cars.
You gotta remember one thing. It's good for people to say, anybody get hurt on the east side is my fault. Anybody get a blessing, it's me. But as a man in Compton, where you see people not having nice stuff, or nice cars, or nice jewelry, and then people say, well, that causes jealousy. Of course it causes jealousy. But if I want to give my homeboy a Rolex watch, I gave him a Rolex watch, or whatever I choose to do. But people are talking